Well, after an excellent race in Assen, we head into the summer break with lots of talking points about what might happen in the second half of the 2023 MotoGP season. It looks like Bagnaia is clearing out at the front, but there are plenty of races still to go after the 5 week break. But that's all to come, so let's take a look at the 5 things we learnt from the Dutch Grand Prix. An incredible ride. This year so far has not been incredible for Aprilia. It's been okay, it's been better than previous seasons, but I think we were all expecting them to do a little bit better. But this weekend at Assen, at the Cathedral of Speed, we were expecting Aprilia to do much better. It's a circuit that really suits their bike, and despite the fact that they had pretty much all of their riders crash off or stop in the feature race and kind of struggle in the sprint, they were rewarded with a podium after an incredible ride from Aleix Espargaro. He once again showed just how good he is, particularly when the bike is working underneath him, and almost how much of an Assen specialist he can be. Aleix did an incredible job because in the first lap, first cornerish, he took damage to his front wing on the right hand side and ended up having to finish the race with severe damage to his aero. And yet he still managed to catch up to the leading group and kind of start to push Brad for a podium. He didn't actually get past and benefited from Brad's late penalty, but still, it was an incredible ride from Aleix Espargaro to keep that bike on circuit with the damage that he had, and it has to be said, it's his best weekend of the year, possibly one of his best rides of his career. Really incredible job from him. Good policing. Now, as you know, I'm a big Brad Binder fan. We've just talked about his penalty, and it was really hard to see him lose 2 podiums this weekend in the sprint and the feature to the same mistake being made in both races on the last lap. But it's good to see that the stewards are sticking to the rules so firmly. I've seen in other motorsports, I think Formula One I saw a little while back, they had some controversy around track limits, and they end up pushing track limits wider and so on. It's good to see that the stewards in MotoGP are sticking to the rules. They're saying, no, you were out of line, you weren't within track limits anymore, and so you get a penalty. It's really good to see them sticking to that, making sure that the rules are followed, because you don't want to end up in a situation in the sport where they're adjusting the rules because transgressions were so minor. It's good to see that they've got that hard and fast. This is out of bounds, out of line, and this is the penalty, even if it does seem a little bit harsh for the actual level of transgression. It's just good to see them sticking to their guns. A streak ended. In the last 4 times that MotoGP has gone to Assen, Maverick Vinales has been on the podium for each one of them. He's just a real circuit specialist, and so it was a bit disappointing, particularly for me who had him on my fantasy team, to see Maverick fall off in the feature race. He was struggling in the sprint, and although he had the speed in the feature race, I think, to actually catch up and possibly go for a podium, if not the victory even, it was disappointing to see Maverick fall off. And it continues a different streak, not of podiums, but instead of crashes. Maverick's been crashing off a lot, and this makes his 4th crash in the last 5 rounds. It's really disappointing to see, and hopefully he can start to turn that around, because we do know that Maverick is better than that, and this was a circuit where he could have actually maybe gotten a bit of mojo back after a tough few rounds. Highs and lows of racing. We hear a lot about the highs and lows of motorsport, and this weekend really showed it for 2 riders in particular, I think. Brad Binder, who we've talked about already, but another rider this weekend to really feel that high and then low was Fabio Quartararo, who was doing an excellent job in the sprint. He wasn't running in the podium, but he was keeping up with those front guys on his Yamaha and doing a really impressive job. And he, of course, placed himself in a position where he benefited from Binder's late penalty to get his first ever sprint podium, which was really cool to see. You almost started to think, well, maybe Yamaha can start to find something. Maybe Fabio will get his mojo back and we'll see him doing better in the next couple of races. But sadly, that was quickly kind of taken away from the Yamaha team, taken away from Fabio in the feature race, where he ended up crashing out, taking Johann Zarco out in the process. It was a really kind of disappointing thing to see. Fabio had already fallen back down through the ranks in the early stages of the feature race, but he might have been able to climb his way back up again. He was quick this weekend, but it really shows the difference between a good day and a bad day that you can have in motorsport, and how little separation there can be. It was probably just something like a bad start that he didn't feel good or wasn't in the zone, and yeah, that's what it led to. battle for second. After another pretty excellent weekend, really, for Pecco Bagnaia, it looks like we will probably this year be focusing more on the battle for second in the title, as Jorge Martin and Bezzecchi look to be fighting it out for that prize. Bagnaia appears to be clearing well out ahead of the field, as he just seems to be consistent and consistently winning. This was a good circuit for him. It was kind of expected that he would do well, but, you know, we're kind of hoping Bezzecchi could maybe take the feature race win as well as the sprint, but he didn't manage it. And Bagnaia just continues pulling away at the front. He's done an excellent job across the first 8 rounds of the season, and I think we'll see more in the future. So it is still early to say, but I think we're going to be looking at a fight for second place in the title in 2023. Rider of the weekend. The more deserving rider this weekend is definitely Aleix Espargaro. He did an excellent job. Riding with damage like that, we've heard how difficult it is, how the bike doesn't want to turn the same, and it really disturbs the whole way the machine operates. You know, it affects everything, from the wheelie to cornering. Anything and everything that you can think of that will change on a bike is affected by damage like that to that front wing area. So for Aleix to bring it home and get a podium is seriously impressive, and that's why he's my rider of the weekend. Struggle of the weekend. So my struggle of the weekend has to go to Johann Zarco. He had an excellent run of podiums in the rounds coming up to this one, but this weekend he just kind of seemed to be nowhere. He didn't qualify very well. I think he was an 8th or something like that. Just fell back in the sprint, was falling back in the feature, and he got tangled up in Fabio Quartararo's crash, and so ended up not finishing the feature race. It was just a really disappointing for Zarco, and he's my struggle of the weekend. And finally, my prediction. So my first prediction was that we'd see Brad Binder on the podium. Now, if it hadn't been for a penalty in either of the races, we would have seen this, and it would have been an excellent result for Binder, but sadly not. My second prediction was that we would see an Aprilia on the podium during the weekend, and we did. We saw Aleix Espargaro get his podium, benefiting from Binder, so, you know, 2 predictions that worked against each other there. But anyway, and so Aleix gets on the podium, and I'm right with my prediction. And my last prediction was that Marc Marquez wouldn't finish the feature race. He didn't even start it, injuring his ribs and things like that. He wasn't well coming into the race weekend, and so he didn't end up starting or finishing the race, so I'm going to count that as a correct prediction. And alright, we've got a long summer break coming up. 5 weeks of no MotoGP. I don't know what we're going to do with ourselves. Not having any racing action. Hopefully World Superbike will make up for it, and we can find something to kind of enjoy in the meantime. If you enjoyed this video, however, please like and subscribe. Thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.